I'm glad it worked out well. We have had a nice full program schedule and had to shift here and there, but today we will be having Dusty Johnson as our speaker. If you already know a lot about him, sorry to repeat, but here are some of the basics. His spouse is Jacqueline Johnson. He lives in Mitchell, South Dakota. He has 3 sons. He got his BA at USD, but then an MPA at University of Kansas. Fun fact, the first time I had seen him was actually in the airport on the way to Amsterdam, because at DWU, that's where I went to college, and my professor, Alicia Vincent, had pointed him out. So I know he has some ties to DWU, and we also have some DWU graduates here too. So the blue is a very popular color. Sorry about that, USD. I do like USD, but you got that University of Kansas, so that's where that blue comes back in. Let's see. Prior to Kansas or Congress, he served on the SD Public Utilities Commission. He served as the chief of staff to the governor and also the vice president of an engineering firm specializing in rural communications. And now he is our U.S. rep for South Dakota. So we'll have Dusty come and present.
Gosh, I'm a little nervous that you guys needed that warning to be nice to me. How rowdy is this crowd? Oh my goodness. Apparently pretty rowdy. It's good to see so many of you that I know, love, and respect here. It's also good to see the mayor. The orange chicken has everyone sluggish after lunch, apparently. No, of course, we don't have unlimited time, so I'll just set the stage for 3 minutes, and then we'll do a few lightning round questions. Listen, clearly, DC is always a more jagged and partisan space than I would like it to be. And yet I do think there is maybe more good bipartisan work happening than sometimes we give our country credit for. You know, we fund our government through 12 appropriations bills, and clearly the one that deals with Homeland Security still needs to be resolved. But we on a bipartisan basis in the House, with almost every one of them had a couple hundred Democrat votes and a couple hundred, both Democrat and Republican votes. We passed 11 of the 12 appropriations bills funding government through the end of the fiscal year. And we've done it in a way that spends less money next year than our country spent last year. So I think a bipartisan understanding of the need for some fiscal responsibility and bills that generally avoided the kind of poison pills that can generally cause shutdowns and cause big problems. I think from a South Dakota perspective, a lot of good going on last year. We, in essence, got the Farm Bill done, addressed crop insurance, addressed Title I programs, addressed conservation, addressed some much-needed reforms to SNAP programs. We will be taking up the remaining 15% of the Farm Bill we didn't get done next week in the Agriculture Committee. Which I'm on. I'm one of the 6 subcommittee chairmen that helped draft the Farm Bill. I think there'll continue to be a lot of good stuff in there for South Dakota. We've got the B-21 bomber coming to Ellsworth. Texas fought hard to be the first home for this brand new strategic nuclear bomber, but it's coming to South Dakota. I think that's exceptionally good news. Obviously, the cattle market's pretty good. The grain market's lousy. We really do need some additional trade deals. Maybe you think we don't need anybody else, right? That America can go it alone. The reality is, even just in little old South Dakota, we export $5 billion a year of agricultural goods. To say nothing of the billions more in manufactured goods. Just focus on ag goods. You divide that by almost 1 million South Dakotans. Trade with other countries, just on the ag dimension alone, is worth $5,500 a year, every year, in every one of our pockets. And imagine how much poorer we would be if we took that $5,000 out of our pockets. So need to work more on that, and I think we are beginning to make some progress. And with that, I would yield for questions or indictments. I don't want to get you in trouble with the chair, but a polite indictment, I will handle those as well. So, yeah.
First of all, thanks for coming. Really appreciate that. I'm looking at my phone because I want to get some numbers right.
Sure.
I'm a lifelong Republican, as I think most of the people in this room are. Part of that's because of the influence of my parents, but also part of it is because of my belief in some of the values that I think the Republican Party stands for, like fiscal responsibility. So I want to talk about the national debt. The national debt is over $38 trillion now. We've added just in the last year, in the last 12 months, over $2 trillion to that national debt. That's a significant increase in the national debt. And I know that I love a good tax cut as much as anybody does, but I don't understand, and maybe you could speak to this and explain it to me, how we can afford the tax cuts in the one big beautiful bill when we know that the economy is not revving along the way we'd like to see it revving along. So in other words, economic growth isn't going to cover that.
Well, but number one, I would acknowledge and endorse all of what you said. To not renew the taxes, which this is not a partisan issue. When Democrats had the House and the Senate and the White House, they didn't roll back those tax cuts because they knew that the Trump era tax cuts were necessary to keep the economy going. And it's maybe not going as well as some of us would like, but a 25% increase on taxes for the average South Dakotan would put this economy into a tailspin. And so, that's a bipartisan understanding, right? Again, whether the Democrats were in charge, the Republicans in charge, they didn't want to roll those back. Now, the new tax provisions, no taxes on tip and no taxes on overtime. Sometimes people tell you there are big new tax breaks for billionaires. Last I checked, Elon Musk doesn't work for tips, nor overtime. I think economists are probably more divided on that. I think they would probably say that those don't pay for themselves. So they would agree with more you and I concerns about the fiscal responsibility of those. That being said, but affordability is the dominant domestic political issue of the day. It would be hard not to provide the $5,000 worth of tax relief for working families that did. But reasonable people can disagree on that. I don't disagree with you. That clearly costs. That's not gonna, that money doesn't come from nowhere. We have to keep this economy growing. If you had all of the power in the world, if this room completely submitted our will to you, you could not on your own, without having to develop any political consensus, you could not balance the budget in 10 years without economic growth, and you could not get that economic growth without those tax cuts. You couldn't. And no common sense economist in the world would stand before you and allege otherwise. Let's say, and then we'll take a couple more questions, but this is a supremely important question for the future of our country. And by the way, did we get everything done? No. We have in the last 3 years cut $1.9 trillion in discretionary spending, the most ever. Cut $1.7 trillion in mandatory spending, the most ever. That is moving us in the right direction. And by the way, all of those discretionary cuts were done on a bipartisan basis. A bipartisan basis through the Fiscal Responsibility Act. But if you said, Dusty, we need to increase taxes on rich guys, you could put into place the billionaires tax that President Biden called for in his last State of the Union address. Let's say we decide we should do that. That's going to generate $50 billion a year. That's a lot of money. But it's like you just said, we're not $50 billion upside down. We're $2,000 billion a year upside down. So at some point, we really are going to need to have some reduction. We were paying $8 trillion a year, or paying $5 trillion a year for $8 trillion worth of stuff, between 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. And so, listen, we need to, if we're going to get this done, we do need economic growth. We do need reduced spending, and we probably do need to make sure that revenues are coming up, hopefully through increased growth. What else? Yeah.
Kind of along the lines of the budget, have you been briefed at all about the president's idea that he spoke about in the State of the Union regarding making the vice president chief of like the fraud squad or something like that?
No, I mean, so for those of you who didn't watch the State of the Union address, and that's not really my jam. I mean, I sort of feel a professional obligation to be there, and whether it was Biden or Trump, I'm always really interested when I am there, but I had literally never watched the State of the Union before being elected to the U.S. House. I sort of think the political speeches are boring. Okay. But yeah, he at the speech said that J.D. Vance would be the head of sort of the waste, fraud, and abuse group, and again, independent, third-party, nonpartisan analysis indicates there are billions and billions of waste, fraud, and abuse. Getting to it is more difficult than just waving a magic wand. There were some very high-profile cases in Minnesota that I think have offended the sensibilities of folks on both sides of the aisle, but I don't know what exactly JD will do on that front.
Okay.
Yeah.
With your term as a congressman, what have you learned from being in Washington? What are some insights and things that, or maybe things you're surprised about, or things that you thought were enlightening or maybe disappointing?
I'm probably more concerned if we're in an exceptionally high era of polarization, and I wish it was an American problem. It's a global problem, and that actually means that it's more pernicious, right? The nuanced common ground take, which I often deliver, that's almost always the right take. It's an incredibly unpopular take. Like, speaking from the far right or the far left is a much better way to get reelected in your primary. And frankly, 90 to 95% of these races are decided in primaries. And so there's not much of a political marketplace for thoughtful analysis. And I think that's probably driven by social media. The only reason I say that is this sort of polarization is not an American problem. It's a problem for every developed country in the world. I mean, we are seeing things happen we've never seen before. I mean, Japan is gunning down prime ministers. They barely have guns in Japan. We have seen Israel have 5 general elections in the last 7 years. We've had the United Kingdom have 5 prime ministers in the last 7 years. We have seen, Macron in France be the least popular person ever in the history of French politics. Like every country, I mean, going back to like Italy and Berlusconi, and that's probably 15 years ago. Since then, every developed country just seems like everybody's big mad about everything all the time. And I don't, in the last 8 years, it's clearly gotten worse. It's clearly worse in both parties. And I think that's, just to sum up, that's one of the reasons that I love service clubs so much, is that y'all are not here because you are angry and you want to rip down one party or the other. You are here because you care about your community. You believe, as Paul Harris did, and other, great luminaries of Rotary, that we are called to commit to something greater than ourselves, and that through collective action, we'll be more likely to get that done. I wish we had more social capital, and that the normies were more engaged in this country in politics. Because when people think politics is gross and they pull away, the only folks that are left behind are the folks who are motivated by fear and anger, and those are terrible long-term motivators. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to chat. I know you got a lot more questions, and I'll wait around a little bit, but we're out of time, and I'm so grateful for the contributions. Thanks.